Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. Thank you so much for tuning in to join us for another great edition today. Today we are joined by Dr. Lucian Spataro Jr., and he is the Chair of Educational Initiatives and a board member of the Joe Foss Institute and Civics Proficiency Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
It's wonderful to have you. I have an entire bio here. We were just standing in the green room and he presenting me this beautiful coffee book. You have quite a background.
Thanks.
That has brought you here today. And for all of our people and viewers at home that don't know about you and having the opportunity to sit down and hear a little bit, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself first,
Sure.
and then about the organization that you're here representing?
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
Okay. So I started off at the University of Arizona in the late 70s, early 80s as an industrial engineer. Worked in Tucson for a number of years, in southern Arizona with IBM and Gates Learjet over in London. And then I decided to shift gears and go into education and went back to school, Ohio, got a PhD in sciences, returned back to the University of Arizona via Mexico, worked in Mexico for a couple of years as a teacher and an administrator down there, but ended up in Tucson as a University of Arizona professor in environmental sciences. I left there and went to Phoenix and was the CEO for a large charter school operation and then involved in curriculum development, and ultimately ended up with the Joe Foss Institute because I was very interested in the educational activities they have going on around civics, civic engagement, and so that's how I ended up with the Joe Foss Institute.
Wonderful. And so tell us a little bit about the Joe Foss Institute and what their mission is.
So General Joe Foss founded the organization about 12 years ago, and it was initially founded to work with kids in schools, bring veterans into classrooms, and talk to kids about the importance of serving your country from a community standpoint, not militarily, but just being a good, strong community member. And that slowly over time morphed into a program around civics and civic engagement, and how important it is to be informed and responsible and engaged citizen. And so we have veterans that go into classrooms across the country in all 50 states. About 250,000 kids a year will meet with Joe Foss Institute veterans talking about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the flag. We bring a flag, a Constitution, a Bill of Rights into every single classroom, and we leave them with the teachers, and the kids learn how to fold the flag and raise and lower the flag. They learn about America through these veteran speakers, and so that program has changed and grown academically, and we now have a teacher training program as well, and so we're all focused now on civic engagement and citizenship and being responsible and engaged.
Wonderful.
In the community.
And so you go out and educate teachers and students?
Both.
And you have people, okay.
Yeah. We have a teacher workshop, and then we also have a workshop for our veterans, so the program is consistently deployed into the schools, so the veterans learn a little bit as well when they go into the classroom. What is it the kids want to learn and need to learn about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the flag? And those teacher workshops are integrated in with that as well.
And whenever you say veterans, is this younger men and women and older men and women and
across the
everyone?
board.
Okay.
Yeah, World War II, first responders, fire, police, EMTs. It's not just military. In some cases, it's first responders as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, they all are heroes, and they're all civically serving us every day and putting their lives on the line. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and share some of this information. We're going to be speaking out with our viewing audience.
Sure.
And so our first topic, we are speaking about youth today, and the first topic is the quiet crisis in education. Before we kind of get started in that, would you mind telling me maybe where that term came from? And
it's a good question, yeah. So the quiet crisis in education was a term that was coined by former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor 2 decades ago, decade and a half ago. She saw the slippery slope of the loss of emphasis in classrooms across the country around civics and history. So she termed this the quiet crisis, and it's the quiet crisis because civics and history aren't being taught with the same level of emphasis today that STEM might be taught. And I'm a STEM teacher, so I know how important STEM is. But and she was advocating for a more balanced curriculum, including civics and history. So she coined the term this quiet crisis in education, began advocating for that. About that same time, the Joe Foss Institute got wind of this issue as well, and we have veterans going into classrooms across the country, so we thought we would help her and advocate for this as well.
So whenever you speak about civics education, what in particular are you speaking to in terms of learning about it in an educational setting?
Right. So I don't know if you know the statistics. For example, well, let me give you these 2 coins. Hold these 2 coins. Here you go. Hold them heads up.
Okay.
Okay.
That, just so everyone knows, that's a penny and a nickel that he handed me. I think we've all seen one of these.
So my question to you is, how many kids do you think in high school today can name the presidents on those coins?
You know, I would be afraid to guess, because most people can't name our current president today. So
I'll help you with that. So 14% of high school seniors can name Thomas Jefferson.
14%?
14% can name Thomas Jefferson.
That's...
and identify him as the author of the Declaration of Independence. But it gets worse. So if you go down to middle school, or slightly lower in K-12, fourth graders, less than 9% of fourth graders can identify Abraham Lincoln on that coin and list even 2 things that he did as a president. So the statistics are overwhelmingly...
Abraham Lincoln, they don't know.
Abraham Lincoln.
And it's very interesting because it seems as though we speak about a lot of issues that have to do with race and with all these different things today, and you would think that they would know who one of the pioneers and...
Exactly. Well, the statistics are even worse than that. 92% of immigrants that come to this country can pass the immigration test that the INS, gives them, but only 13% of American seniors in high school can pass the same test, and that's at a 60% threshold, which is a D.
Wow.
So civics is not, in history, are not getting the same level of emphasis they had in the past when we were all growing up as kids.
Why do you think that is? What is the cause of that?
So over the years, there's been a perfect storm of changing emphasis towards STEM, which is an important set of disciplines, science and technology.
Yes.
And I'm a STEM professor, so I know I teach it. But at the same time, along with that, the perfect storm of standardized testing and emphasis on testing STEM. So now schools are incented to, in the classroom, test primarily STEM-related disciplines. And teachers, the old adage in education is, if it's tested, it's taught.
Okay.
So if it's not on a test that matters, then teachers in schools are incented to really put a lot of emphasis on those disciplines like science or civics and history, because it's not on a test that matters. A test that matters today is a test that's tied to graduation or funding in schools for the roof on the building or teacher salaries or that sort of thing. Civics is not on those tests. So it's, I don't know, when I was a professor at the University of Arizona, perfect data point, if a student would ask me in the classroom, is this going to be on the test? If I said yes, the student would lean forward, would be engaged, take notes, ask questions. If I said no, they'd lean back, drift off, and disengage.
Yeah.
So we want our kids engaged so that if civics is on a test or history is on a test that matters, I think they'll be more engaged. Teachers will be more incented to teach it, and schools will be more incented to work on those disciplines.
And with Common Core now and
Right.
this whole new push for the federally regulated education in our nation, we've seen test scores come back now and show that it hasn't been very effective. But beyond that, are they even further pushing out the civics and the history and the way that they're teaching it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. On the core platform, civics and history don't exist.
They don't exist.
Right, so they're not on that core platform. That core platform is primarily focused on STEM right now. So we're advocating that in our civics initiative that kids take a test, the same test that an immigrant takes when they become a citizen. And that, we believe, would be a test that would cause schools, for a graduation requirement, to be incented to teach civics like they do STEM today. But as far as standardized testing in the core platform, civics and history are not on those tests. So there's no incentive for schools to teach it.
And this is most certainly an issue, obviously, in education and in schools, but it almost makes me wonder where the change came in the family, because I know that these 2 coins right here, I mean, at dinner, that's one thing my dad would sit there and quiz me about presidents or the longest river or war dates. Or has something changed in parenting and in families, do you think, that's also affected this, that parents aren't demanding that their child comes home and can tell them who our founding fathers were, who our presidents were? I mean, that's something in school where, we had to name all the presidents in order. And do you think there's just been a fundamental change?
Well, it's a good question. The emphasis, that perfect storm of changing emphasis towards STEM and the standardized testing with the STEM discipline being on that platform to the exclusion of other disciplines, I think has infiltrated the entire culture of the country. So there's a huge emphasis across the country on STEM, and it's going back a couple of decades. And all we're doing is advocating that be more balanced curriculum with civics and social studies and history being represented on that core platform as well as from a testing standpoint. And I think once that happens and those scores are reflected, then parents will ask, how'd you do on the test? I did great. What was on the test was civics. Civics was on the test along with science.
Okay.
But right now, all that's on the test is science.
And from your personal perspective, from the research that you've done over at the Joe Foss Institute, what do you feel is the benefit of having students that come out of the education system with a balanced view of civics and of history?
It's a good question. You know, the voter turnout for demographic 18 to 24 is really low. I mean, we're talking low teens. It's not really high. And my concern is that a lot of kids who go to high school today don't even know they have the right or the responsibility to vote when they graduate. You know, when I was going to school and we did debate, we had student government, we ran for president, we ran for vice president, we had a Congress. They don't do that anymore in schools today. So I don't know if kids really know that being civically engaged and responsible is an important thing to do. So that really tells me a lot about where the country is going to go down the road when they don't know there are three branches of government, one's the executive branch, and on and on and on. That's how we operate our republic, and so it's something they need to learn, and they're not learning that today. And so I think that's we need to get that back into the curriculum and back into an area where it's being emphasized and fully focused on.
I think that it would probably make a difference as well if it started out in K through 12 as a foundation, because now we see organizations like Rock the Vote that are trying to get kids involved, trying to get that 18 to 24 demographic involved. However, if there's probably not a fundamental basis and understanding of what influence government truly has on you and what influence civics and all of these things have on you, it probably is a little bit of a superficial movement, would you find? Maybe I'd like to call it the Twitter generation, a certain amount of characters. Do you feel that maybe does not have the same effect as if you come at it from in building that foundation of understanding?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It has to be embedded in the classroom like it used to be, so that teachers, social studies, civics, and history teachers had the oomph, the credibility with the kids that the science teachers have. So all of the other bells and whistles that go with a discipline that's getting a lot of focus, like a science fair or a civics bee or a civics fair or debate or student government, they're all equally emphasized. So kids know that when they come out of school, they learn in school that they have that responsibility, that engaged, that right to vote. And if they don't get that in the classroom, they're not going to get it after they get out of school.
How interesting. No, and that's very true. I mean, I think a lot of it may come down to, though, we've become a very a country that's very superficial, and also afraid of, I think, of offending people and a little too politically correct. To where I remember whenever I was in elementary school, we did projects on different nationalities and different groups and different origins of people, where now they probably there's so much fear of offending someone that they probably try to almost steer away from that to avoid lawsuits or to avoid issues or to avoid the news showing up at your school and saying that you're...
Well, they definitely water it down, that's for sure. So, and to the extent that, you shouldn't be, I don't believe you should be, what America was and what America is going to be, that's something we should be proud of. In 200 years, we became the biggest and strongest and most impactful, in a positive way, country in the world. And so that's what people should be proud of. And along the way, there were, little turns and twists and things like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're still a beacon of freedom. So and that's because we have a Constitution, we have a Bill of Rights, we have a flag. And so I think that people should be proud of that. And they have to learn that in K-12. And again, the only way they're going to learn that, again, the old adage in education is if it's tested, it's taught. That drives the entire emphasis and the entire focus of teachers today. And I think that if we put it on a platform along with the other disciplines, it'll be much more powerful, and I think it'll be helpful to the country.
Yes, well, thank you very much for this first segment, Dr. Spataro, and
Sure.
for all of you at home, I hope that you've enjoyed this first segment. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short message.
Parent, your priority is protecting your children. You've probably thought about car seat safety and storing medicine properly, but what about laundry safety? Laundry packets should never be handled by children. Each packet contains highly concentrated detergent, and if ingested or exposed to the eyes, could cause serious injury. Like all household cleaning products such as bleach and dish detergent, always keep the product container closed before, during, and after use. Store laundry packets out of reach and sight. To learn more, visit cleaninginstitute.org/handsoff. Brought to you by the American Cleaning Institute.
Hello and welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. Thank you so much for staying with us if you just happen to be joining us. Today we are joined by Dr. Lucian Spataro Jr., and he is the Chair of Educational Initiatives and a board member of the Joe Foss Institute and the Civics Proficiency Institute. Thank you so much for staying with us, Dr. Spataro.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Great first segment on the quiet crisis in education. And now we are going to move into Civics Education Initiative. What is the Civics Education Initiative?
So the Civics Education Initiative is an outshoot from the Joe Foss Institute. As I mentioned in the earlier segment, a couple years ago, we were introduced to Justice O'Connor, and she talked to us about the quiet crisis in education, and we decided that as an organization, our organization could really serve the country by expanding its educational effort to include civics, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the flag in a bigger way. And we began teaching students in courses across the country with teachers, hundreds of thousands of kids. At this point, we've served 1.6 million kids and about 250,000 kids on an annual basis. But that wasn't enough. This crisis is expanding, and it's still not getting a lot of visual sort of focus. So we thought we would take on an initiative to try to get civics back on the front burner, so it's equally emphasized as the other disciplines are emphasized in schools today, by putting it on a test that matters. And a test that matters today in education is one that's